we need to address the elephant in the room, which is that Amelia is bad in general, as in the general class. Like,
Okay.
you say, like, I don't know where to start with this. Do you think all our options are equal, or there's some options that are better than others? Do you think general is the best?
My crux for that argument is that there are a lot more situations in which Paladin Amelia would, in fact, supersede General Amelia just based off of movement alone. Just having that option to just get in and out of combat, and her being not as frail as.
You're supposed to argue
one
for your
would
side of the
believe her
argument,
to
not
believe.
mine.
No, I want to make it. You know, I'm not above giving the other argument. It's fair shake and fair deal.
Okay.
Her as Paladin Amelia has more of these cruxes that you would use to define a really good character. That is something I cannot take from that argument. What I am saying is that outside of those parameters that you would play that character in, and only focusing on the niches in which a general would succeed in, I would say that General Amelia would be the better choice if you were playing a certain way to her strength.
I would assume that would be a very slow play style, which gets into that awkward notion where I feel like every character is equal because you're taking infinite time, and the end result is always the same. Every enemy is dead.
Even still, the thing that I kind of disagree with about her being exactly the same as the other characters, if you only give that character enough EXP or enough advantages so that they can be decent, so that you can have like a legitimate unit to have and to play a certain role. If I needed a general to hold down a certain choke point, I would pick Amelia plus whoever she's supported with to hold down that choke point. I wouldn't send a Colm as a rogue in that position, even though he's leveled up and maybe he's also 2020 as a rogue. He still wouldn't be the best choice to put in that chokehold all by himself. That is kind of what I'm trying to say.
I get it, but at the same time, I think you're overestimating the importance of class alone when it comes to doing certain things. Because first off, there are some pretty strong, even defensive characters that can hold a choke point even though they are not generals. You do not need a general to hold a choke point. Again, using the best unit in the game as an example because I can't think of anything else right now. Seth is a super bulky unit. He can hold a choke point anywhere, anytime, no problem. He's fine. And he's not a general. He's perfectly fine. Also, I think you're overestimating the difference in bulk between Cavalier and Paladin. Or am I saying that right? No, Paladin and General. So Paladin has a promotion, has 2 promotion bonuses from to Cavalier and to Paladin. It gets a total of plus 2 HP and total of 1 defense. General gets 4 more HP than that. It gets 2 to Knight and then 3 to General, and then it also gets 5 in defense. So in the end, and I think I mentioned this in the video, General Amelia at promoted twice and just at level 1 General has like 38 HP and like 15 to 16 defense, which I think it's not invincible, I'll give you that. It's actually, it can die to like a really huge horde of enemies. But if we're holding a choke point, where which by definition is a space where not many enemies can attack her at once, it's a choke point, I think she's gonna do fine. Even in a chapter, and I think this is a good example, chapter 19, where you have these small corridors. It's like, yeah, yes. Reeve chapter, yeah. Even in those corridors, unless Amelia starts killing everything in sight on enemy phase, which I assume you don't want because you're trying to hold the choke point, she's going to be fine taking a couple of attacks. And meanwhile, General, sure, it can do that too. Or did I say this right? Well, actually, I'm mixing up her stats for a bit, but she has, yeah, as a General, she has 38 HP and 15 to 16 defense. As a Paladin, she has 35 HP and 11 to 12 defense. Like, she has 11.4, so I always say like 11 to 12 in that case. She is still going to be fine taking 1 or 2 enemies in that choke point. She's perfectly fine. And then if she gets hit twice, you can just heal her after, because all she has to do at that point is hold a choke point. So even if you're giving her a class that is not supposed to be suited for the role of choke point holding, she can still do it just fine. Now, I don't think there's actually any point in FE8 that you have to hold a choke point, and I think if you're going to try and choke out chapter 19, there's actually a strat you can do where you hole up in the treasure room and all you have to face on every enemy phase is one longbow archer, which Colm can actually do as like a level 1 rogue or something. So I think if you need a general at all to hold a choke point, I don't think you're using really good strategies to begin with. And I also think, like, if you're in a playstyle where you're trying to lure enemies one by one, you keep talking about luring enemies with like pointer characters, I think you called them, where you just send them out to bait enemies, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You can use a Cavalier Paladin Amelia for that too, because you're not luring every enemy on the map right there. You're luring a couple. So as long as you're careful about where she's going, you can lure like a couple of enemy Cavaliers and Archers. She's gonna survive just fine. And then you can pick them off with the rest of your group, because most players who play like this, who need like who are moving at the tempo of a general, they'll just move like 5 steps at a time with every character, and you have like this huge ball of death running through the map, picking off enemy characters. And you're almost like you're outnumbering the enemies at that point, because you're not facing them all at once. You're facing them in tiny blocks, like bite-sized chunks that you can beat. And even for that strategy, I feel like Paladin is better, because the Paladin just has more options with like rescue dropping and everything, and it can still do the things that General does, which is baiting enemies and doing a couple of enemy phases. Sometimes you might have to hold back a little because her defenses are worse. There will be cases where there's too many enemies, but I think those will be far and few between. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but whatever, you know what I mean.
No, that's the right.
Okay.
Saying.
Yeah, English is not my first language, but
that's fine.
Yeah. So I really don't see why you would sacrifice all of the amazing advantages that Paladin has, such as having a better sword rank, having a sword rank at all actually in tier 1, having more movement, having rescue utility. All of these assets, I don't know why you would sacrifice them for slightly more bulk when the playstyle that you're going for doesn't even require that much bulk, because you're going through the map so slowly. So that's a huge ass wave of things I just threw at you, but feel free to address anything that you remember.
Okay, so point 1, just General Paladin versus General Amelia, playing towards the General's strengths. I would say that in that particular playstyle, we're not trying to specifically rush. Again, we're not trying to rush down the enemy and overwhelm them with just might and force and trying to clear as fast as possible. We're just trying to use very general and not, how do I say this? Not as lethal as we could be force. It's just a really menial amount of power that we're going to use. Like, we're going to be using iron to steel weapons. We're not going to be using any A rank tier weapons. It's just to see what each unit can do in to try to play as I guess you could say traditionally as possible, to try to see how the units would interplay in their set scenarios. So if I were to send Paladin Amelia with an Iron Lance to go into that Chapter 19 choke point, she would probably be killed pretty easily by the amount of reinforcements that she would probably kill on one round. And then she would open herself up continuously to more enemies.
This really depends on how you place her, and I think if she dies in that position, it's on you, because it's a choke point. So you can see the enemies if you torch a little bit, you can see which enemies are going to attack her, and if you put her in range of too many, I think that's honestly on the player in that choke point. Like, if you're going to base a strategy around a choke point, I don't think it's fair to say she's going to die if I put her in that choke point. If that happens, you're putting her in the wrong place, or you're just using the wrong unit. Maybe you should be using like Seth or something instead, because, you know, I don't like, the other advantage of Paladins is like, so maybe that spot isn't available for her if she's a general, but if she were a Paladin, she would be able to get into a better position. Like I said in the video, you can use higher movement to get into a better choke point position, so that she doesn't need to face that many enemies. And I am pretty sure that Iron Lance Amelia specifically does not kill enough enemies on enemy phase to just die. Depends on like her stats and everything, like how high she is. Yeah. Like, and I think you also, and I didn't watch this part, but I think you also mentioned like supporting her with friends. That increases her bulk by even more as a Paladin. Gives her, I think, +1 defense. No, I think it's +2 actually, because Amelia is a light affinity, right? So she gets +3 defense from that support, so that makes her even bulkier. So I'm finding it very hard to believe that it's so important to have that extra bulk for that one choke point, or this particular choke point, that she sacrifices all of the goodies from the paladin class just for that choke point strategy, where choke point strategies are the easiest strategy to limit how many enemies reach her. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
So like, especially with an iron weapon, she's not going to free up enough space to get killed as a paladin. I really don't think that is the case. And if she does, equip a different weapon, because all she has to do is hold down the choke point. She's going for low offense, like you said. She's not aiming to kill things. She's just trying to hold the choke point. So you can freaking disarm her if you want. She's not going to kill anything, and that way it's very reliable the amount of enemies she faces.
Depending on just generally what you're trying to accomplish in the choke point, if you're trying to advance, or if you're just trying to hold it down, or if you're just trying to like slowly funnel enemies out, I still feel that General Amelia would be a better candidate for that position, because she can be malleable in that she can either go forwards, because none of the enemies are going to stop her from going forwards, and she can kind of let enemies slide out so that you can feed them to other enemies or other units, so that they can feed on some of the more of the enemies like coming out of the choke point, so they can flood in and be eliminated as they come out. I have never heard of the treasure room.
No, it's because no one uses it, because I think most people who, like, the people who are like so like studied at FE8, they generally just warp skip that map by killing Reeve, because it's just so much quicker. So, and I think that actually speaks against your example of wanting to funnel out enemies. I feel like if you're trying to advance past these enemies, you could just, like, if you want to get past them, the easiest way to do it is just warp over them, kill Reeve, chapter done, over, no risk. If you want to stay there, either because you want to get a lot of XP or because you feel dirty for killing the boss, you can make sure Amelia doesn't die by choking the point. I don't think there's much value in this mid ground, and I also think that the times where you want this kind of choke point strategy are super rare. This is one of the only defend maps in FE8. In fact, I think every map in Sacred Stones that is defend is also kill boss. So I think there is very little value in the ability to hold a choke point.
I would disagree, and in several instances you do need like certain units to hold certain semi-choke points where the enemies are going to be coming in either by reinforcements or by nature of them advancing towards you. On chapter 5, where you get Joshua, that entranceway where he is like kind of defending, you have those two brigands that are going to come in and destroy the village. So you're going to need at least two characters that probably aren't Seth that are going to hold down that particular area.
Okay,
and
well, I'll bring in my General Amelia then. Wait, she's not there, isn't she? Just joking around, but like, like why? Like, I don't see why that's a relevant example in this discussion, because Amelia is not around in that chapter.
Amelia's not around in that chapter, but I'm saying that the game does offer you opportunities to have choke points.
Okay, but the subject of the discussion was why Amelia should go General.
That's a chapter she's actually in, chapter, I think, not 15, but 13? No, the chapter with Idas.
Yeah, that is 13, yeah.
Yeah, chapter 13 is a perfect example. There's that small two square window where the enemies are just going to funnel into, and if you have a Knight Amelia, or if you promoted her enough, or if you give her an EXP at that point, you're going to have an actual General Amelia. Hold down that choke, and at that point she would be at least competent enough to not need too much managing. She can give a Vulnerary or an Elixir, or just have one of the healers on standby.
That is an example. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I guess she can reach that tile, but it is like Amelia, just because she's a general does not give her a monopoly on choke points. You have other characters at this point that can hold this choke point and in fact do fine. That point is not under too much pressure. Well, it is under a bit of pressure early on because of the rangers, but once they're gone,
yes.
You don't need to hold it. And as I said, the easier way to clear this chapter is obviously to just kill the boss, but I guess you want to wait for Cormac if you want to recruit him, so there is that, I guess. This is an example where you want to hold a choke point for a little bit, sure. But I do think you have other units who are competent enough to hold this choke point. Even Paladin Amelia could reasonably, I think, if she is, like, if you have a promoted Amelia at this point, which I think is a little bit questionable to have her second tier promoted at this point.
Yeah, you would have to have fed her a lot of EXP, not counting the tower, but just giving her all of the enemies to kill.
Yeah, and, so that's why I think it's like, I don't think Knight Amelia is really good in this area. Like, I think she's she probably gets doubled by the Rangers and takes a fair bit of damage, but not. I don't know if she would die right away.
Depending on how her stats are and if you've supported her with Fran, she can hold. I've held that spot many times with a supported Amelia with Fran's,
okay,
and they kind of hold that point down.
Okay, especially if we're using a context where we're using supports, you have so many other candidates for holding the choke points that, again, you're passing up on a class that is, as you admitted, many other good perks just to have someone that holds choke points. And like Franz himself, for example, if he is properly supported, can hold that choke point. Seth can hold that choke point. If you clear out the bow using enemies, even freaking Vanessa could hold it, because if she is supported, she dodges everything because her supports get full of void. Like, geez, what other characters even exist in this game? Garcia can hold his choke point pretty well because he's weapon triangle and everything. Ross could do it if he's been trained. Kyle could do it because he's defensive enough, and if you were, like, I think it making him a great knight, but if you were to do it, he would even have weapon triangle. Let's see who else could even do it.
I think Ford could do it.
Yeah, even Dozla can freaking hold it. So yeah, I don't want to say anything about positive about Ford because I hate the guy, but I guess he could do it. So I really don't think that this chapter, like chapters like this, are not worth, like, this is not worth an inferior promotion. This is not an important niche to have, because A, I have alternatives. I have alternative units for the strategy, and B, I have alternative strategies such as just killing the boss. So I really don't think this is like a good reason to go general. It's like a very tiny factor. It's like a very tiny advantage to using General Amelia, but it pales in comparison to all the advantages of Paladin. And I even think, again, that if you are arguing for a supported and promoted Amelia, then she would do almost as well as a Paladin in this chapter. But I think we agree that you probably won't have a tier 2 Amelia. Also, I don't think Knight Amelia can actually reach the 2 point on turn 1, which is kind of sad.
Not on turn 1. You wouldn't really need to get to it till, I guess, turn 3. Like, if you really needed people to not get hit for whatever reason. I don't know why you would not have capable enough units to survive one or two counters on an enemy phase, but turn 3 should be more than sufficient enough for her to, like, do her job.
Well, if you don't get there on turn 1, but you stand in range of the Rangers, they're going to come for you and attack you, and the other enemies are mobile and are going to get on the choke point too. So you're probably, like, at that point you might as well take an offensive approach and just kill everything that's come up close, and the need for a choke point almost completely disappears. So I don't know why you would want to let enemies come to you for a little bit, then kill them and hold a choke point. That just seems counterproductive. I would just kill things instantly and then just kill the boss, or hold on for a very long time.
Depending on what my, like, overall goals are, because another goal that I have in mind that the game kind of alludes towards, kind of like the rating system in FE7, to kill all the enemies on the map, including reinforcements that may or may not come in depending on how quickly you're destroying all the enemies.
Like,
so if I wanted to hold down the choke point and give other units EXP as I'm waiting for other reinforcements to come in, I can just have her there and have, let's say, a Nimi on a ballista, like, shooting the Rangers from one square back, and have Franz throw a javelin from one, or have him right next to Amelia, and they both kind of hold the choke point as it's 2 squares, and have, like, other units able to support them from the back. Have Arthur or Luke throw magic from another square away, and that kind of solves that problem. And have other units go to the other side of the map and get ready to recruit Cormac and put Erica in place for that.
But this is like this is such a personal preference to want to route the enemies. It's actually more dangerous to try to route this map, and more, like, it's more risky to do that than to just take a safer strategy. And also, it's like, it doesn't even really sound like an argument for using General Amelia, more so than like your preference of how you want to tackle the map. But like I said, there's alternatives to this strategy that I feel are equally or more viable, and there's alternative ways to your strategy that don't involve General Amelia. So I think the way you described how you tackle this chapter isn't really a good argument for promoting Amelia to a general. It's like...
Well, the reason why I would want Amelia as a general there versus Gilliam is because her stats would allow her generally to surpass him at that point, and then I would feel safer having a General Amelia there who is also supported with friends to hold down that choke point, rather than have any other unit there where I would feel less comfortable with them surviving a wave of rangers and other units that may or may not do enough damage to threaten them, to have them on the point of being killed the next turn, or not being able to be saved because the enemy turn.
But you don't need Gilliam, you don't need Amelia. I mean, you could use them, but you don't need to. You can see how many enemies could attack her and decide on a safe person to place there. It might be that you could place no one there. You might have to place someone further away, or the rangers from a little further away, so that you're not taking the choke point for a turn. But again, this is such a tiny little bit of utility that feels so insignificant towards the perks. This is like, is this kind of thing really what compensates for a massive amount of movements and Kanto and rescuing and the extra sword and everything?
Not on its own. No, not on its own. It's a combination of, this is a moment in time where she really excels if I make her into this stalwart defensive unit. And then I get another chance to experience this really amazing set piece for her in chapter 19, where there's the choke point. There's actually 2 choke points. You can send her up or you can send her down. Where chapter with Reeve would not necessarily require, of course, but you can have the strategy of having a defense centered around a general or a really high defensive character that would be able to take all of the punishment, and you could sway. You have more control over how the enemy ebbs and flows if you have a unit that's able to just push forwards through a wave of enemy turns. Like a unit that can hold 3 enemy waves coming at them is more valuable to me than someone who can one round Reeve on turn 1, because it's not in my parameters of how I would like my strategy to go, and for what I would like to accomplish, which is to kill all the enemies that the map spawns.
I'm trying to find good words to describe this problem, because I can see where the difference is. It's like you play in such a different way and value such different things that General Amelia seems better to you, but I also get the feeling that because you value this specific path that you're taking so much, you're missing out, or rather you're not seeing the value of all the other things that the other path brings you. It's kind of like, it's almost like you've got this, like, people accuse me of only seeing one way to play, like having if people are really crude, they'll say like, oh, Mekkah has a boner for knights or like mounted units or flyers.
A lot of people make comments like that on my videos.
Yeah, funny. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes it might seem like that, but at the same time the reverse exists too, where a lot of people, I feel like, are overvaluing, for example, a high defense stat, or even just seeming bulkier, because again, I don't think the gap between General Amelia and Paladin Amelia bulk-wise is all that big. It is significant, but it is not so big that Amelia cannot do some of the choke pointy things that you're seemingly wanting her to do as a general. I just don't think the difference is so big that it's worth giving up all these perks that I've mentioned before, time and time again. And another thing I want to bring up about General Amelia, and this is the last thing I want to discuss, because we're almost at 2 hours, so fuck this.
Oh yeah.
The other thing I want to bring up is, maybe you like General better than Paladin, But can you see how atrocious Knight Amelia is compared to Cavalier? Like, holy shit, Knight is such an awful, awful class to be in when you have such a large map to cross and you only have, like, imagine being Amelia and you're like, yay, I'm no longer a trainee, I get to promote. And you have 4 move and you promote and you still have 4 move. You still have 4 move. That's so freaking bad. And you only have 1 weapon type, you only have lances. So you only get to build your sword rank if you want to build that after you go general. I think she gets like E rank swords after promotion to general.
She does. You can only use
horrendous. I mean, not that swords are that good, but like, oh my god, that's terrible. And like, if you want to feed her kills, that means she's just so restricted on where she goes because of that 4 movement, and she has weapon triangle disadvantage against all everything that has an axe basically. So those are off limits. So the few enemies that she can reach at 4 movements also cannot be axe users, because in order to kill those, she would need like an axe reaver or something. I don't remember if she can use those at that point. Probably if you train her weapon rank up enough, but I think her base rank is E, so it takes a while.
Yeah. At that point, when you're facing a lot of axe users, like let's say 3 or 4, I think she could, like similar to Vanessa, you want to have that comparison between the two. I feel safer having Amelia fight a couple rounds of axe users than I would Vanessa, because with Vanessa I have to depend on her dodging more than anything else. Like if she gets hit twice, that's probably a KO for her. For Amelia, she can take about 3 if not 4 hits before she's down, depending on
Knight Amelia.
Yes.
Okay, so once Amelia promotes to Knight, she has 23 HP and 7 defense. This is roughly what Friends has at base level. So that's roughly the bulk we're talking about. So 23 to 24 HP, more likely 23, but whatever, we'll say 23 and a half, and then 7 defense. I think fighters, if they have like, I don't know, 9 to 10 strength, and then I think axes have 8 might at the top of my head, weapon triangle, so like 19 attack. 7? She's gonna get 2-hit KO'd, basically, is my point, by anything with...
at level 1, yeah.
At level 1, yeah, definitely. So, and it doesn't get better that much faster, because Amelia has horrendous growths. Like, her defense growth is 30%, her HP growth is also pretty low, it's only 60%, most characters have more. So it takes her a pretty long time.
HP growth was her best, it's like, yeah, 60%.
It's 60%, which is, like, it's the only growth of hers that's over 50%. She has 50% luck, but that's it for her highest growth. And HP isn't a really very good stat, mostly because a single point of HP doesn't really get you a whole lot of extra durability, so to speak. So pretty much anything with a steel axe is going to 2-hit KO her. I think even steel lances might 2-hit KO her. So even though Knight, a supposedly durable class with high defense, Amelia still has below average defense at this point. It takes her until she gets to a general to actually have decent bulk, but as a Knight, she is both pretty fragile and pretty slow, and she can't move for shit, and it's just such a horrendous class to be in. I didn't really stress this during my video, but it is really a big chore to get her out of this, and I think this is something that people who like General Amelia generally don't really touch upon.
It's not that I don't touch upon it, it's that I accept it as a part of the entire experience of playing the character. It's not something I view as... It's not bad to me, but I can see other people calling it just horrendously terrible because of the other options that are available to you. But that seeing her climb over that is what makes that whole area not necessarily worth it, because I do like being in that space of not... I don't know if she's gonna dodge, or I don't know if she has enough HP as a knight to be able to handle all this right now. I like that that point of vulnerability before she's able to like be a stalwart unit.
You're basically saying that I like this out of a personal preference, but like, if this isn't bad, if this isn't something that we dock our points for, if this isn't something that we penalize when raiding units, then what is? Because this is pretty much the worst performance possible, besides like her stage before, the recruit stage, which is basically everything Knight is, except without the promo bonuses, or even worse. So if this isn't something that we penalize and dock points for, then what is? What do you have to do to be a bad unit in FE8? What is it that makes a unit actually, you know, bad?
I'm not going to say that that's not bad, because it is, and I'm totally willing to give that an objectively bad point in using the character. In any RPG where you're at that point where it's kind of a slog and you don't do enough damage, and the enemies are kind of one-rounding your party, or that character that's just holding your team down. Yes, that is objectively bad, and it's not something that's typically fun for a lot of people. The difference with that character is, generally, she is able to not only get over that hump, but far and above exceed that hump, time and time again. Whereas the character I use as an example, and the character that you use as an example in your video, was Noel. In my opinion, I think Noel is an actually bad character, because he is probably the worst mage in the entire game, sans if you're willing to deal with Ewan.
Well, Noel is bad at combat, but you never really need to use him for combat. And in fact, the reason I like Noel more than Amelia is because Noel can do things without any kind of investment beyond a promotion item, which at that point you get for basically free. So there is no real opportunity cost to promoting Noel, getting to Summoner, and then summoning, I think you can admit, is actually pretty useful, especially for people with a slower playstyle, but also for people with fast playstyles, because they can make things safer for everyone by luring one dangerous enemy. Like there's that Shadow Shot Gorgon in chapter 18. That's I think he nearly one-hit KOs, or always he's like borderline one-hit KOing Cyrene, for example, which I think is hilarious because she's supposed to be, you know, durable against magic, but she just gets one-hit KO'd because Shadow Shot is ridiculous. But the Gorgon is like, hey, I see a guy I can kill, I'm just gonna kill your summon, and he dies. And then everyone else in the army is like, hey, thank you, Noel, for, you know, sending that summon. And then he's like, you're welcome. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I could help. So Noel can do something with no investment on my time, no tedium, nothing. Amelia, I have to pump EXP into. I have to feed her a lot of kills. I have to give her like a ton of, like, I have to baby her. Whereas for Noel, it's really just give him a promo item and he's good, and he's gonna help me, he's gonna have a positive impact on my army. So at worst, he is helping me, whereas Amelia is like, I have to sink resources into her and then hope it turns out alright, hope it turns out even. But Noel never has really any real negative about him. You have to keep him out of combat, but it is really easy to keep a unit out of combat when they never have to see combat to be useful to begin with. These summons give him so much extra range to be useful that it doesn't even matter. Now, I'm not saying that Noel is good. I would say Noel is pretty terrible as a unit overall because he has so much competition, but I do think he is helpful in some ways without any kind of investments. So,
to counter that, I would say that it's funny you say that I would like him as a summoner as opposed to a druid. I actually
there is no point promoting him to druid. He should always go summoner.
Yeah. He's literally like one of the worst dark mages in the entirety of the GBA trilogy. But the reason why I don't like him as just, I don't know if he has an archetype or if he's just himself. The reason why I don't like him is because even if I were to invest in him, I have other just leaps and bounds. Like the way you feel about how Vanessa is towards Amelia, where it's just like stratospheres of difference between her and the better units. I feel like Noel, just even if you invest in him in the way that I'm suggesting you invest in Amelia and other characters like her, he just doesn't give you that satisfaction of having a unit that starts off kind of mediocre or just terrible and becoming someone not even decent, but just so significantly below average. It's just, why did I even bother?
That's Amelia, the thing about Noel. You don't have to bother doing anything. He is bad at combat, but he never has to see combat. He is just a utility character. And I know for you and a lot of other people, a lot of fun in Fire Emblem is about starting with something terrible and building it up to be great, and starting off as like a fragile knight or recruit or whatever, or like a mage or Pegasus Knight, and just see him grow and watch him overcome problems. And that's fine, that is fun, but it doesn't mix well with trying to see how good they are throughout the game. For someone like Amelia, you kind of gotta you gotta take the good with the bad. You gotta take both. And even if you like the bad, I think you should be able to see that there is bad in there, which you do admit. Whereas for Null, there really is no bad if you use him in the right way. You just promote him to summoner and you're done. You can use him in a different way. You can try to train him. You can try to invest into him. But there is no point, because you know you're not going to get anything. You're going to get a mage with terrible luck and shaky AS and poor durability. There is no point. So why would you do it? There is no point. So arguing about Null and him being bad by using him in a way he is, I don't know if he's intended to be like that, but he's so suboptimal if you train him that I don't think it's viable to argue about him as if you were going to train him up. The way you should compare Null to Amelia, for example, is saying, okay, I'm going to put investment into Amelia and then compare them, and I like weigh the positives with the negatives. And for Null, you just have to take a small positive to summons, and that's it. So you weigh his small positive against Amelia's negatives and positive, and you come to a conclusion. So there should just not be any kind of factoring in Null's negative utility as a combat unit, because he's not a combat unit. You shouldn't use him like that. There is no point, and he can help you without combat. So why does his combat potential matter at all?
But it's not even just its combat potential. Everything that he can do as a support unit, he does worse than everyone else. He's a worse healer than Natasha. He's a worse user of, I don't know, any utility set. He can't use warp. He can't use not recover.
Yes, Null is a shitty staff user. He can still do it. Like if you need someone, if someone is like a little wounded, like I don't know, say the shadow shot guy attacks someone in your backline or something, or like you have multiple units healed or hurt. Null can still heal, like I think it's like 20 HP with a heal staff. You can do that, and sure, he's worse than your other healers, but he still adds a little bit of possibilities of like an E-rank staff that you might have a use for. It's bad. It's not very useful. It's like useful for maybe one turn out of your remaining 100 or something, but it is still something that helps. It's not something like, it doesn't hurt you any. The fact that he has a staff doesn't hurt you any, because you never had to put work into him, and everything else he does, it's like a plus. Like on my LTC run, I actually had Null attack an egg, I think, and kill it because I had no one else available to do it. So I was like, yay, I'm gonna kill an egg with Null because, you know, he's there, he can do it. It didn't hurt me any, so there was no opportunity cost in here. So I don't know why you're counting it against Null that he can do these things just because other characters can do them better, because he's adding it to them. You're getting more of the same thing, the same good thing. So why does it matter that Null is worse than these other characters at it?
The issue that I really have with Null is that even though he can do these things, there are so many credible and even mediocre people that have, like you said, have had time to be. I think you get Mulder on chapter 2, and he's such a staple character for many people's playthroughs as the healer. Or if you want to use Natasha, she can be the staple healer. Or if you want to use Arthur or Lute or
like, yeah, there is alternatives, but again,
first it's not just that there are it's not the fact that there are alternatives. It's that him as a choice is such a bad choice, even without those alternatives that just hold him down in this pit and rut that he can't get out.
But Null is free. He is completely free of investment. So the moment you get him, you can either choose to use him or not. If you don't use him, you don't get his utility. If you do use him, you get his utility. So it's a bonus. You have to weigh it against the unit slot, sure. But if you didn't train more units than you have unit slots, then you can fill in perfectly for basically free. And also, you act like he's worse at everything, but there's actually only 2 characters in the main campaign who can summon. The other one is Ewan, and Ewan is bad. And he also might not even go Summoner. I think Summoner is probably the best path for him, but that's another discussion for another day. So, Lute cannot summon, Seth cannot summon, Vanessa cannot summon, Amelia cannot summon. If you use Null, you get summons, and summons are pretty useful. So, I don't really see why, like, sure, he's inferior at other things, but he adds something unique, that's A, and B, if you need him to, he can heal a little bit of HP, or kill an egg if you really want to. Those are all positive things about Null, and sure, other characters can do them, but they might be busy doing other things, and with Null you get an extra character who can do those things, and that's helpful, and that's positive. I don't see how you can really spin it any other way.
It's such a small positive, though. Like,
but it is a positive, that's the point. It is a positive.
Yeah, they. I will grant you that those are positives, but they're so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. It just puts him in such a lower position that his positives are so insignificant compared to everything else that I don't see how you would have gotten to that point unless you just were playing just horrendously and you didn't have a competent healer or you didn't have a competent person who can go out and take a shadow shot or kill an egg. Like, he should never ever have the credence to even be in those situations. You should, at the point you get him, you should have like a solid team of people that you're going to use to end game.
But you get your solid team, and then you get him on top of it. He is extra. Like, there's no opportunity cost, so there's no reason not to use Null as an addition. Like you say, you should never do these things, but I had a team. I had a 100% growth playthrough. I don't know if you've watched it, but I had a Seth with like every stat capped. I had Vanessa with almost every stat capped. I had a Franz with good enough stats for endgame. I had a Tana who was like almost promoted. I think it's kind of funny how that works. I had Cormac with like really good stats. I had a Dancer, of course. I had a Garrick. I had Dusel. Who the fuck else did I have? I had Kyle. I had Ford, but he wasn't promoted, so he doesn't count, and it's also Ford. I had so many really, really good people, and I still got utility out of Null. I still found him useful in Chapter 18, even though I had all these really good units, because Null gave me something I didn't already have, and he actually was much more useful to me than a promoted trained Amelia would be. Now, I know this is like an exceptional playthrough, this is a different kind of thing than what you usually have, but it was still helpful to have him summon people and kill eggs. And if you can do that in like the most strict circumstances of a playthrough, an LTC playthrough, I think there's something to say that his utility is not just... Sure, okay, it's small, but it is there. It is good.
Let's use that.
The alternative is not having those things.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm done.
Oh, okay. I thought you were wrapping up. I want to use that as a point to see if we can reach like a consensus.
Good luck with that.
on things that we can't, because there are things we do agree on. I'm not going to sit here and say that nothing you've said gels with me or resonates with me or I didn't understand. I understand your points, and you've made them clear and concise, and I get it.
Yeah,
there's some things we don't necessarily agree on. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good that we were able to hash this out. But in that particular play style and playthrough of having 100% growths, that could, what I was talking about before, that could be like a legitimate alternative way to play the game in which Null wouldn't be so. And I guess I don't know where he ranks on the current standard tier list.
Probably
but on that tier list,
roughly in the bottom. No, like Null wouldn't even be much different in a normal gross LTC or anything, or even an efficiency run. Null is roughly the same utility, I think, in almost every kind of run you can think of, unless you use him suboptimally, in which case he's worse. So okay. Yeah, but
in that scenario, I would actually like grant him a higher spot because there are parameters that benefit him in his way of supporting the group in ways that you would not get if you played in these other types of play styles. So in that way, I would say that Null is a good character with a huge asterisk in that in this particular set of circumstances, he is a good character because of X, Y, and Z and how he supports with X, Y, and Z. Does that make more sense?
It makes sense. I still think my standards were better though, but I see what you mean.
That's okay. That's okay.
I see what you mean though. So let's wrap this up because this did end up less long than I think if I would have made a response video to you. That would have taken 90 minutes plus the time it would take me to elaborate on my points, which is probably like 3 hours. So I still think we gained some time here. But overall, I have no idea how I'm going to cut this into parts. I'll probably either just upload a giant video or make like timestamps. But for now, thank you for being here. Let me know in the comments who you agree with, what you think.
Oh, wait. One more point.
Oh God. No, I'm not. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not going to make anything like...
Okay. By the way.
Let's find...
Go ahead.
A point let's take a character we can both agree on is good,
Mm.
and separate the qualities that make that character good in both of our eyes, and see if we can understand a little bit more of how we rate characters in our parameters.
Okay.
So, what is one character you think we could both agree that they are, well, let's say top tier?
Well, I don't know where you stand on the whole EXP stealing thing, but I'm gonna go with no. I don't want to open the kind of worms with Seth though, so you don't like Vanessa, so
I'm not gonna lie, Seth is not a huge point of contention with me. Like the whole Jagan archetype, I understand why some people may think that I don't like Jagans, or that would be counterproductive to the way that I like to play. But I do like to use Seth for like specific things that I like to do. So.
Okay. How about, France? I guess. I mean, France is, I think, like as good as a regular combat unit can get. He joins very early in a very good class. He's very strong in every aspect. There is no context imaginable where France is bad unless you modify the games or something. I think.
Yeah. I was gonna suggest Cormag, but France is pretty good.
Yeah.
There's like, I don't understand what kind of parameters you would have to be playing in to rate France as a bad unit, but yeah, that's something I think we can both 100% agree on.
Yeah, I think for France to be remotely bad, you have to play like reverse recruitment, where you edit the ROM for everyone to join a reverse order. I think that's pretty much the only way you can make France bad.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting.
You could make every tile desert. That would also work to make France bad. You could make always weapons weigh like 20. I don't know. But yeah, okay, so after talking about Amelia and parameters or everything else, we came to the conclusion that France is a good unit. I'm glad this has been a productive 2 hours. So, let me know in the comments what you think, who you agree with, whether you lasted 2 hours or whether you lasted a shorter time. Is there anything you want to say to the audience in general?
Thank you for giving me the time and energy for this recording and for this discussion, because I didn't think that anybody would see the video or have this discussion again, because apparently it's a pretty long-standing discussion that's been talked about ad nauseum. But I still feel like the reason why it resonated with people is because there's still things to say, and there's still feelings that people have that just aren't being articulated in a way that they would like people to articulate them, in a way that would reach a wide range of people.
Okay, well, I'm glad we sort of came to an agreement on some things, and maybe not everything, but that's just the way life goes. So I'll see everyone around. See you around. Bye. See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.